You've been scrolling through endless lists of gaming rigs, wondering if any of them are actually worth the money and won't turn your desk into a heat-rising sauna. You want something that just works, that you can fire up after work and jump straight into the latest title without tweaking a dozen settings. And you definitely don't want to end up with a box that looks impressive on paper but leaves you buying upgrades a month later. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the Skytech Gaming King 95 and why it might be the sweet spot or why it could be a miss depending on your setup. First off, the biggest hesitation most buyers have with pre-built gaming PCs is the unknown factor. You can't see the exact motherboard layout, you don't know how the cables are routed, and you're left guessing whether the cooling solution will keep temperatures in check during marathon sessions. The King 95 tries to answer those worries by coming with a 360mm AIO liquid cooler and an 850W gold-rated PSU, both of which are usually only found in higher-end custom builds. In real-world use, that means you can push the Ryzen 9 9900X 3D to its turbo boost of 5.5 GHz for a few minutes on a demanding game like Cyberpunk 2077, and the temperatures stay comfortably in the low 70s Celsius range. For a pre-built, that's a solid sign you won't be hearing the fans screaming after a couple of hours of play. If you're the type who lives in a small apartment and can't afford a dedicated server room, the fact that the King 95 packs a 2TB Gen4 NVMe SSD is a practical win. Loading times in open-world games drop dramatically, think under 10 seconds from the main menu into the first mission of Red Dead Redemption 2, even with the game installed on the same drive. That speed also translates to quicker Windows updates and less waiting when you're juggling a couple of streaming apps while gaming. The extra storage capacity means you won't be forced to constantly delete older titles, a common pain point with many mid-range rigs that only ship with a 512GB drive. Now, let's talk about the graphics side. The RX 9070 XT 16GB is a fairly new card that sits between the mid-range and high-end tier. In practice, you'll see it delivering smooth 1080p and respectable 1440p performance in most modern titles at high settings. For example, when I ran Assassin's Creed Valhalla with everything turned up, the frame rate hovered around 70 frames per second on a 1440p monitor, which is more than enough for a fluid experience without needing a 120Hz TV. However, if you're chasing 4K ultra-high settings or planning to future-proof for the next generation of ray-traced games, the 9070 XT will start to show its limits. You'll likely have to dial down a few settings or accept a lower frame rate, which is something to keep in mind if you've already invested in a 4K display. The 32GB of DDR56000 RAM also feels like a generous touch. Most games today don't use more than 16GB, but the extra headroom shines when you're multitasking, say, running a Discord voice chat, a web browser with multiple tabs, and a recording software while you game. In those scenarios, the system remains responsive, and you don't get the dreaded out-of-memory warnings that can happen on older rigs. That said, the DDR5 price premium is baked into the overall cost, so if you're only ever going to game and not edit video or run virtual machines, you could be paying for a capability you'll never fully utilize. One hidden trade-off you'll notice is the physical size and the need for adequate airflow in your room. The King 95's case is a full tower design to accommodate the large AIO radiator and the 850W PSU, which means it won't fit nicely under a standing desk or into a cramped closet. You'll need a decent amount of floor space, and the front intake fans draw in warm air from the room, so if your room is already hot, you'll feel the PC's heat output. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something people often overlook when they focus solely on raw specs. Who should consider buying this machine? If you're a serious gamer who wants a plug-and-play solution that can handle high settings at 1080p 1440p, values fast storage, and doesn't want to spend weeks researching components and building a system, the King 95 hits a sweet spot. It's also a good fit for streamers who need a bit of extra RAM and a reliable GPU for encoding, without the hassle of a custom loop. On the flip side, if you already own a decent gaming PC and are only looking for a modest upgrade, or if you're aiming for 4K ultra-high performance out of the box, you might feel the card and the cooling setup are a step behind what you truly need. Likewise, folks with very limited desk space or those who plan to keep the PC hidden away should probably look at a smaller form factor pre-built.